Warriors get beat 131-110 to Memphis. They give up 48 in the first quarter. And to me, JD, that game last night was
it was ugly.
It was ugly, but it was a game where every time the Warriors, they didn't make any runs in that game. They were all pseudo runs. They all got to a certain number, and then I always say, well, it's now at that point but it never got past that point.
Yeah, every time it looked like they had action, they showed you immediately they had no action.
Exactly.
And we're down 12 again or 18 or whatever it wound up being. But look, we've talked about the first quarters, and you give up. I mean, this was the worst first quarter maybe the whole season for the Warriors after they had just had two horrendous first quarters against the Lakers and against Oklahoma City. You give up 40 to OKC, and you're thinking, well, that's about as bad as it can get. Oh, no. You give up 48 to Memphis, who came into the game without a couple of starters themselves and looking like they were in complete shambles. And I think the most alarming thing, and there are a lot of alarming things off of last night and off of these last three, I think the most alarming aspect of last night's game for the Warriors is the fact that everybody on the planet knows they wanted that game last night. They wanted that game last night. They hate the Grizzlies. Dillon Brooks is popping off. They feel like they got a little something on the Grizzlies based on the playoff success that they had last year and knocking them out. And they wanted to go into Memphis last night and put it on the Grizzlies when the Grizzlies were just as down or maybe more than the Warriors had been, and they couldn't do it. They gave up 48 in the first freaking quarter against them, and that to me shows you that either this team's just not that good, or they're reaching for something that they just don't have.
Really?
One or the other.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man, anybody can win in March. Anybody can win in March.
Well, you got to win in March, Draymond.
I have a hard time getting out of my bed in March.
Yeah. Well, you got to win in
March, me.
Yeah. To be able to win in May, you got to win in March. A little more than you have to this point.
I'm kind of with you. I was thinking about some things last night, and this team's got some issues to me, almost literally from top to bottom, from the owner to the 15th man, from Joe Lacob to Anthony Lamb. They really do. I mean, you start at the very tip top. You got Joe Lacob and Bob Myers, who, I'll say it, they're not on the same page. Because if they were on the same page, Bob Myers would have a contract for next year. Then you go all the way down to the last man on the bench, Anthony Lamb. I mean, they could have used him last night.
At 35 for Santa Cruz, right?
They could have used him. And would he have been the difference in the game? Probably not. But the reality is you played a game shorthanded. And Kuminga gets hurt, and now you're down another man. They're not playing defense, JD. They seem very disconnected. They give in. They give in, I think, pretty early. I feel like they start games with the right intentions, but just kind of the minute things start to snowball, they realize, you know what, we're not good. I think the big three doesn't think they're good enough anymore.
They get
Maybe
demoralized.
They
get demoralized.
They do.
They come out, they take the same shots and attempt to make the same plays that they've tried to make throughout this championship run, and if a couple of them don't go the way that they're used to them going, they kind of tap out for a few minutes and then regather to try and make another run, or they just get hot from three and the game gets a little bit closer, but it's sort of a faux comfort, a fake comfort once the game does get closer, and then they go right back to turnovers, horrible shots, terrible defense at the point of attack, no rim protection. I'm going to say it, Steiny. Yeah. Last night, and you've known me for a long time. We've done a lot of shows together. I've used this term a lot. I don't think I've ever used it with the Warriors. They were gutless last night. That was a gutless performance last night in Memphis. And here's the other thing. They've got the big three right now. They've got Steph, Clay, and Draymond. And we can talk about Wiggins and Poole.
That's a good point.
Lamb. Steph, Clay, and Draymond, all three together, these last three games for the first time in a month, and they lose all three. And not only do they lose all three, Steiny, but they're non-competitive, I think, in all three. Like, What is going on there? Like, the big three, and Joe Lacob said this, the big three plus another guy, but
right.
that's going to determine how good or great this team can be. And they've had nothing. Steph's been pretty good, I think, but Clay, here's the other. Clay's been awful the last 3 games. Remember when it was, hey, Clay's never been better? Clay's been awful the last 3 games. But that was a gutless effort. That was Dallas going through the motions, losing at home to Charlotte, giving up 130. That was the Clippers messing around, up 15, and they lose. Like that was the low-level NBA these last 3 games, especially last night, that, well, thankfully for the Warriors, it still exists, because if it didn't, they'd be 11th in the West right now, and it'd be night-night, and it would have been night-night a long time ago.
Yeah, I hear you. And the one thing, now we have Kevin Harlan coming up. He called the game on TNT. We're going to have him in 10 minutes, so we're in a little different spot with the calls. But the one thing that I'm very aware of is, I'm skeptical of this particular Warrior team. And there are a lot of Warrior fans that I think continue to think that this thing's going to turn around. And who am I to say you're wrong? But I'm wondering, how many true believers do you think are really out there? Like, it's easy to say, oh, you guys didn't think they were going to win it last year. Look what happened last year. You guys didn't think they were going to win it last year, and they won it. So when you guys were wrong, okay, you're right. We're wrong. Everybody was wrong last year. Me most of all, if you want to say it that way. But are there really people out there that would bet on the Warriors to win it all right now? To bet on them to win it all? Because I don't think there are. I think there are a lot of fans out there that are hoping and that have put a lot of faith in the past, and rightfully so, and have looked at this team like championship players. But I don't think there's anybody out there that looks at where they are right now and says, you can pick any team in the NBA, and their first choice is the Golden State Warriors. Come on now. I don't think so.
I've given them the benefit of the doubt a lot this year. Hey, they're hanging in. The standings say they're in it. If they can win 5 in a row, they've got action. Then they win 5 in a row at home, which they've been able to do for the most part all year. You're getting Steph Curry back as you go on the road, but it's March. It's go time. They've said it. They, again, quadrupled down on the fact that they've turned a corner and feel like something's going to be different. And then those are the 3 games we see this week on the road. That's the first quarter you see against a team that is so beneath you and you hate so much that you refuse to even consider them a rival, when you know they would love nothing more than to smoke your ass for 50 and a quarter and blow you out even shorthanded, because they can't beat anybody else. Like, how many teams have beaten the Warriors lately that can't beat anybody else? Like, when you start running through Portland hadn't won a game in a month. Portland beats the Warriors before the All-Star break. Like, all these teams on the road that were Oklahoma City. Right. Oklahoma City, borderline quit 2 weeks ago. They started resting Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and they put up 140 against the Warriors. This is not the Lakers without LeBron all of a sudden losing at home to Minnesota and look like they were in a bad way. Warriors come in, they're ready to roll. They got 2 wins against the Warriors without LeBron this year, and 3 in the last 27 days. This is not, I've given them the benefit of the doubt, Steiny, a lot. I'm to the point where I think I'm fed up giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, and
show me April 9th where you are and what your matchup is, and come find me then. And yes, all these games still matter. I'm not saying they don't. If they don't win now, they're done.
I mean, honestly, JD, this season is more we believe than trying to repeat. Seriously, what's the difference between?
I don't know if I'm going to go that far.
2007, they were probably around 500 right now, or getting there. So they needed to put a great 21 games before the postseason.
But did they end up 42 and 40?
42 and 40. They were like
8 under.
They were
under.
25 and 30. They were 26 and 35.
Okay,
26 and 35,
under.
and they went 16 and 5, and then they beat the Mavericks. So they're 34 and 33. So maybe they can go 10 and 5 and knock off a higher seeded team.
Tell me how they're going to do that when they're playing two of the best teams in the NBA, albeit without Durant Monday, which does change the calculus on Phoenix. And then you're going back on the road for 5 after that against varying degrees of competition. But you're playing Atlanta. You're playing the Clippers down there. You're playing Dallas at the back end of that in a couple of weeks. Like that. You're playing Memphis again in a couple of weeks. I mean, tell me how they're going to go on that kind of run when they don't have the home games to get on that kind of run, at least right now.
Well, I can't answer that because I think it's going to be very difficult. I don't think they're going to do it. But this road trip to me, JD, and you kind of put it right, is they're great at home and they're terrible on the road. But what are they going to do? Start winning on the road or losing at home? Because that's really going to that would dramatically change things. And I got to tell you, I was thinking about this. This team looks so disjointed right now. They look like they're just a sliver from it almost coming apart, that I actually think they may get blown out the next 2 games. Believe it or not. Like I think it's possible the Bucks could come in here and just kind of demoralize them. I really do.
How do you get Curry back and look more disconnected? How do you get Curry back and look like you like each other less? Because that's also going on right now. Like they are again, and it's kind of gone back and forth this year, but they again look like a team that doesn't like playing together, which has been really problematic and alarming this season.
Well, without saying it's somebody's fault or not, I mean the one thing is, when you're playing with if Steph Curry's one of the greatest players of all time, and he is, playing with Steph Curry and without Steph Curry then becomes a dramatically different thing. You take the best player in the league off your team, you're going to have to play way different than when that best player is on your team. So I think there might be something to that he's so important that it's hard to just say, oh, this is how we play with him, this is how we play without him.
And I'm not blaming Curry at all.
Of course not.
At all. But here is what I'm saying. I think you could make the case that this Warriors team this season has been built better than teams they've had in the past at being able to play without Curry. Hey, this team's got players to where when Curry's out, they can survive. But they're not well built for Curry when he's there. And whether that's, Klay Thompson's shots are just coming in different ways that take you out of rhythm, and Draymond's not doing this, and Wiggins isn't around, and Poole, I mean, he stinks right now. And I've given him a lot of benefit of the doubt. But he goes back to the bench, and all of a sudden it's Olay defense and terrible shots and the turnover. Like, he can't fit his game into the box when the Warriors have everybody available, and that's a big problem. DiVincenzo hadn't been the same since Curry come back. Kuminga hadn't been the same since Curry come back, and now is hurt again. Whew.
Yeah, there's a litany, unfortunately, and we're going to talk about it on the